Welcome, happy warriors. I'm thrilled to welcome you to this Eye on Israel with Nina Tokayer. And I will let her introduce herself, other than I'll start by saying that Nina is a wife and mother and lives in Israel. She is a singer and one half of the Yonina duo, which she and her husband sing together. I believe you also compose your own music. Is that you or Yoni or both of you? Both of you?
Both of us, yeah.
And lyrics. And they are a very popular Israeli singing group. And I am thrilled to have her join us. So, hi, Nina.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Would you just share a little about yourself? When you moved to Israel, where you live in Israel, a little bit. Just a little bit. How many children you have?
Sure. So, I was actually born in Israel. My parents made Aliyah right before I was born, and
You
we
have three
lived.
older brothers, and they were born in the States, and you were.
Right. You have inside information.
I do.
And nowadays I'm married to Yoni. We've been married for almost 10 years. We have four children. We live in Pardes Chana, which is like a small town in northern Israel, and we make music together.
Has Pardes Chana been under attack a lot? Have you had a lot of sirens and a lot of missiles coming at you, or not so much?
Thank God it's been relatively quiet for the first big part of the war, completely quiet. Like we didn't have a siren here until the northern front, heated up about maybe like 2 months ago.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then recently we've been having a few sirens, but nothing too bad. I'm really grateful that in terms of our kids and everything, they more or less are able to continue our day-to-day routine and go to school
Okay.
and just have a bit of a sense of
So
normal.
I spoke to our daughter Ruthie this morning, and she also lives
Mhm.
towards the northern part of Israel and had the same experience that it was very quiet for the year until about 2 months ago. And she has a newborn about 2 months old. We were there then.
Wow,
And the baby was crying this morning, and her 5-year-old went over and said, "You don't have to cry. There are no sirens."
so sweet.
Yes, that's life in Israel. Give us a little background. I love your music. I will tell you that. I love um it's emotional, it's beautiful. You and your husband together, your voices meld together beautifully. The lyrics are beautiful. How did you and Yoni come together?
With a lot of help from Hashem, mamash. Can't explain it any other way. I
A
was
little more
doing
detail though.
I was doing my national service, my shirt lumi in
Can you
Sfat.
explain what that is to our audience?
Sure, it's an alternative to military service, which a lot of times Orthodox women choose to do. Some serve in the army and some do national service, which is another form of service for the country. It can be volunteering for a nonprofit or really anything that's beneficial to society. I did my national service working with an amazing nonprofit called Leave Not, which is based in Sfat, where we ran educational programs for young Jews coming from abroad, where people could both connect to the land and connect to their Jewish identity and to their spirituality. So it was a really special place to be. And during the end of my second year there, I met Yoni, who was in Sfat leading a group of teenagers for Shabbat, teenagers from Australia, who Yoni was a tour guide and he was taking them around Sfat. And he took them to see the view from the balcony of the place in which I was doing my service. And we had this beautiful balcony with the view of the mountains around Sfat, the Meron Mountains. So he came up to the balcony and we had a very short conversation. And a few months later, he found me on social media and we continued that
Oh,
conversation.
yay, social media. We found a good use for it.
We have a lot to thank social media for, from us meeting each other, starting to go out, to our career. We have Mark Zuckerberg gets a lot of credit. Um, but yeah, so after he started talking on Facebook. We very quickly started going out and got engaged.
When did you find out that well, you must have found out right away that you were both interested in music. I'm sure that was one of your
Hmm.
commonalities. And when did the idea that, hey, maybe we could become a singing duo? When did that come about?
Well, the name Yonina was a nickname that our friends and family were using for us as a couple way before we actually opened our
So
platform
just
with that
so
name.
her husband is Yoni, she is Nina, and their singing group is Yonina.
Right. So like at our wedding, there were t-shirts that said like Yonina. It was whatever. That was just our name. And after we got married, we each had our own music that we were working on. Yoni was actually almost finished with recording a solo album when we
Oh,
met. So he was working on his own music, and I had some songs that I had recorded, and we were kept, thinking and dreaming about what we would each, how we would each follow our dreams and, share our music with the world. And Yoni kept saying, I really think that what we should do is make music together. I think that the two of us together can be much more powerful than us, each pursuing our music separately. So we were singing together like always, but we officially like opened, our social media platforms and started posting a video once a week uh, before Shabbat, kind of like Thursday night or Friday from our living room. And we figured, we'll see where it goes. Maybe we'll grow a following. Maybe we'll be able to one day do a crowdfunding campaign and I don't know, record an original album together. And much, much faster than we could have imagined. Things kind of exploded online, and it was really like this roller coaster experience of
you were this
like,
young couple learning how to be married, and all of a sudden it was learning how to be married and how to be business partners.
yeah,
So
and parents, and
quickly, parent.
yes,
So your music, when you started, or a lot of your songs were very much based, you had songs about having a new baby, and then you had songs in the voice of your daughter. You have a song, I Can Do It by Myself, or right? And
Mhm.
many of your songs are in Hebrew, and so, but you have a few in English. And after October, and you also had songs about love for Israel. You have songs about traveling around Israel and just how beautiful Israel is and enjoying Israel. And they were very personal and mostly I think upbeat and songs. And then October 7th happened. And you and Yoni, could you please talk about your song Melaketet Kochavim, which is in Hebrew. Otherwise, I would share it with everyone because will tell you the first time I heard it, I burst into tears. And I still cry when I hear it. It is an absolutely magnificent song. Can you tell everyone about that song, please?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, so Melaketet Kochavim means gathering stars, and it's a song that I wrote about 2 weeks into the war, as I was trying to process what had just happened to our lives, which had completely been flipped upside down. Everyone in Israel, and I think also around the world, felt, how life had suddenly taken such a turn. And I was trying to process the experience that I personally went through, which is that on the morning of October 7th, Simchat Torah, we were on our way to the synagogue, to shul, and our kids were already ready to go on their scooters, ready to go get their candy bags. And suddenly our neighbor stopped us on the street and said, some crazy things are happening in the country. Yoni should probably go check his phone. So Yoni
Which,
ran into
just
the
to explain, people, we do not use our phones on holidays normally.
right.
That
All
would
right. That was a very
that's a
extreme
big deal to
moment
say, go
there.
check your phone.
Yeah. So Yoni went into the house and immediately saw dozens of missed phone calls from all of his commanders and immediately understood what he needed to do. And he changed into his uniform and ran. And in the meanwhile, I ran to catch up with the children who had already started walking to shul to tell them, it's
What
actually
age are your children? Now they're a year
our,
older. What age were they then?
right. So our oldest is now 8.5. So I guess 7.5. when this all started. And then we have a son who's now 6, a daughter who's 3.5, and a baby who is a year and 2 months. So
Is that a boy or a girl? I missed that one actually. I have to tell you honestly. Which,
she's the yeah, our youngest. She's a girl, and her name is Shuvi Rina, which is crazy because that when she was born like a month before the war started, then that name, like nowadays it seems like almost a prophecy that we chose to name her Shuvi Rina, which means return joy. And we had no idea how much we would need the joy to return, how much we would pray daily for everyone to return to their
mhm,
homes and
a
for our
beautiful name.
hostages to return. And this is the name that we gave her before all of this started. Anyways, back to the song. So Yoni quickly changed into uniform, ran after us to tell us to say goodbye to us and give a hug to me and to the children, and drove off.
And
And
you're
then,
like, what just happened?
right, what had just happened to our lives? And then we continued walking to the synagogue, where we saw many other women with red eyes whose husbands had just also driven off, and we were together, and we supported each other, and we helped each other through this crazy moment. So the song tells that story of that morning, and I say how throughout this great darkness that we're experiencing underneath these black skies, we try and gather stars, because that's what we can do, to try and get ourselves through this long, long darkness which we're experiencing. We try and find, whether it's our faith, whether it's the moments of chesed, kindness that we see around us, whether it's our hope that good days are yet to come, whatever it is that can keep us going, those small stars that we can gather in the darkness to give us the strength to continue.
So you wrote the lyrics to the song. Is that because you and
Yeah,
Yoni each recorded it? So it's a duet. You sing, you're each
right.
singing, you at
So
home and him at his army base.
so after I wrote the first half of the song, I kind of let it sit for a bit, and I actually started performing for groups, different solidarity missions that were coming to Israel at the time. And after performing for one of the groups, that while I was performing for them, I said, there's a song I just started writing. It's not finished yet, but maybe I'll share it with you. And I translated the words for them and I sang it to them. And at the end of the concert, one of the women approached me and said, I don't know what you have in mind for the rest of the song, but I would really love to hear Yoni's part of the story.
Wow.
Which, yeah, and after that, I was literally, as I was driving home, I called Yoni, who was, in reserves, and I said, Yoni, you have to write your part of the story. And then I kept reminding him every time we would speak, and I said, did you write your
In
song
between
yet?
he's
Did you write?
fighting a war, but in between that.
Exactly. He said, I'm a little distracted, but no, I haven't had time to write my side of the song yet. So during his next visit home, I basically sat him down and said, well, tell me your part of the experience, and I'll try and put it into
Mhm.
words, and I'll try and put it into the song. So yeah, I ended up writing his experience as well, but it was through what I had heard from him.
That it is beautiful, and it's basically you're supporting each other, and you're saying, please, he's saying, please hug the children for me, and you now have the full job of being parents, that being, mother and father to your children while he's off, and not burdening him, letting him keep his mind clear for what he has to do. Um, can you talk a little bit about that, and also about how, because you're not the only one, as you said, there are many women in your neighborhood among your friend group. So what that's like for the women, the mothers who are here now, in not only having to act as a single mother on a day-to-day basis where everything falls on your lap, but also being worried about your husbands. Can you share that with people a little?
Sure. So I think that there's a line in the song which gives over this experience very strongly, where we say, sometimes in order to win together, you need to stand separately. Because the big slogan of this war has been Beyachad Nenatzach, we will win together. And at first, it was very hard for me to see that slogan everywhere at a time in my life where I'd never felt less Beyachad. I felt you feel completely alone on a day to day basis, meaning at least, as a couple and separate, and there's biachad, biachad. I don't feel biachad, but this knowledge that we are each standing and fighting on our own fronts, but we're fighting together for this larger purpose, which we both believe in, for our country, for the safety and the peace of the state of Israel, gives a sense of togetherness, even though we are physically separate. And I think that this togetherness is also something that I feel very strongly from the community here. And I think that if before the war we knew that community was something that was important, now it's like oxygen. It's just a very basic necessity that you just can't survive without. And I feel very, very grateful and blessed to have a strong, supportive community, and we help each other through it. So, I mean, there are many other women here whose husbands have been drafted, but there are also people whose husbands aren't, or who have been drafted but on a different round than us. So we kind of support each other, each one at their turn, because now we're in these cycles where people come back and then they go again. And I personally had two friends who gave birth also, like, right, more or less at the time that I did. So either right before the war or during the war. And we would, meet and talk about what we're experiencing and listen to each other and support each other. And that is so important. That sense of sisterhood and of togetherness.
Oh, I'd love a song about this. Is there going to be a song about
Just not, even if everyone's going through hardships, just knowing that we're all in it together and that we understand each other and we can be there for each other has been really, really important. And I just want to say there's been so much kindness and chesed, so much support from like the tiniest details. Like the first 2 weeks of the war, there were no schools. And, that just creates like pure chaos beyond all the uncertainty and fear and everything that we all needed to process and, just have a second to catch our breath and understand what had happened to our lives here. And the teenagers in our town, within 24 hours, put together a camp completely for free, completely a volunteer basis for all the children whose parents had been drafted. And they did an incredible job, and they did this every day until all the schools were back. And then when the schools came back, they said, okay, so we'll do an afternoon program once a week for the children. And the amount of, people knocking on the door, offering to hold my baby so I can take a shower, or, bring over dinner, or just like so much kindness. And not to talk about the support and the love that we've been feeling from abroad, from just feeling that people are praying for us, and donations that Yoni's unit received when they didn't have armored vests and the basic equipment that they needed. So I think that this sense of togetherness really, really helps us get through these hard times.
Thank you. That's very valuable, because it's sad, but sometimes we need the hard times to remind us what's important when things are going too easily. And I think that's happened in the rest of in America, certainly, and in Europe, that we have forgotten what it is to struggle, and struggling can bring out the best in people.
Mm-hmm.
Going back, because what I'd like to do is I'd like to share a link with when we put this out, I'd like to share a link to one of your songs. So I was looking for an English song that we can share. And you have a song, Somewhere in the Middle. Is that the correct title?
I think that's the title of our album. You're referring to Movement?
I'm talking to the one, but were you pregnant with your daughter when your grandfather passed away, or had she just been born? So what's the name of that song? That's a song.
Called Movement, right?
Movement.
But you're right that in the chorus, the main lines are "We're all somewhere in the middle," which
so I was just going to say, so full disclosure, I've known Nina since before. Well, my husband and I have been friends with Nina's parents from before she was born, which is how I know about her older three brothers. And our families have been friendly now. I won't say how old you are, but it's a long time. It's a long time, or how old your oldest brother is, but it's a long time. And so we were also very close friends with Nina's grandfather, David Medved, who was a neighbor of ours. He actually drove us to our wedding.
Wow.
Know if you know
I
that.
didn't know that.
We had a beautiful Cadillac and he drove us to the synagogue for our wedding, from after the ceremony to the reception. And he was a neighbor of ours. He lived downstairs from us for a number of years. Someone we admired and we respect and loved. And you were expecting when he passed away, your first child, right?
So, my 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 dad's father, David Medved, actually passed away, I think, a few years before that when I
Really?
was
Oh,
a
okay.
teenager. Um, but my the story behind movement is that when our son was born, our second, then parallel to him being born, a few things happened with my mother's parents.
So this
So,
is so funny. I had no idea about this. I always thought that song was about
oh
uh,
wow. I
your,
mean,
okay, this is so interesting for me. Okay.
sorry, it's complicated, but it is about my grandfather. It's about actually my mom's dad,
Mom's father.
and basically what happened is that as our son Achia was just a few days old, then my mother's mom, my grandmother, my savta,
So I
and
remember well. Yeah, I mean,
right, so she was struggling with dementia for years, and just after I gave birth, she like stopped responding officially. And then my mother asked if I could go over and visit her. So I was staying at my parents' home recovering after birth, and she said, I'll watch the baby if you could maybe just go over there. So I went there and I sang to her, even though there was no response. But I believe that the soul always hears for
yes.
neshama. And then I came back, and then my mom said, Zaidi, my mother's father, had just fallen and broken his hip. And up until then, he was completely independent, a doctor, and going to work every day. So I turned to her and I said, what's happening? Safta and Zaidi and our baby. And she says, there's a movement in the souls.
Your mother is
So
a poet. So this, I just will,
yes.
she writes poetry. So that's, yes.
So I sat down immediately and wrote the song. It was very, just came out. It was born in like 2 minutes. Like it was just came out in a very, very authentic way. And I actually had the privilege of singing the song to my Zaidi. I recorded it and I sent it to him. And we even flew once to perform in Chicago where he lived, and he came to the concert. So I even got to sing it to him in concert,
Oh, wow. Did you cry? Yes.
of course. um, and and then, after as we were working on the video for this song, he passed away. So we dedicated it in his memory.
So I have to tell you, because I think one of the signs of a classic, whether it's in poetry, which songs are poetry, is that you can relate it. It's something people can relate to their own experience. So because I knew your other
My
grandfather
other
so
Zaidi, yeah.
well, I related it to that. And I will tell you, we lost our daughter Rena this summer. And I always liked the song, partially because I thought it was about your other grandfather, because I must have lost track of the years. But now when I hear it, I cry because I think of my Rena. And it really, so I hope to share that with people because it is in English. So it's a song that they can relate to and people can listen. And it is beautiful. But it's what I love about your singing is it's very real. And I just love it. Aside from the fact the two of your voices together are just exquisite. Are your children musical? Do they? Well, they are. I've heard some of them on songs a little bit.
Yeah, so we're always a little torn about how much to bring them to the front of the stage and how much to keep them behind the scenes. But yes, they are very musical. Our oldest daughter, Ashira, really likes to
Whose
sing.
name means I will sing, really.
Yes. And Achia, our son, is really talented with rhythm. He's now studying drums, and he plays percussion. He's
Oh,
6.
wow.
And also our 3-year-olds can really carry a tune. So it's fun.
What's
It's fun to
that?
sing together with them.
Is there anything you'd like to share that I haven't asked you, or just anything you'd like to add on?
Thank you. I guess just that in between these rounds of reserves, we are trying to maintain, whatever part of a routine we can. So thank God Yoni's finishing up another round of reserves, hopefully in a week. And then we're going to go back to performing together. We do concerts also in Israel, but also abroad. We travel a few times a year to different communities in the US, in Europe, sometimes in Canada. So we actually, he was able to get out for 4 days from reserves a few weeks ago, and we traveled together to the Netherlands to perform
That's
for.
how, I mean, we're talking 2 days after there was a huge
Yes,
problem.
yes. We were there. We were staying in Amsterdam for 4 days, just a week before this happened, and it's shocking, to
So just to
hear, to
fill
see.
people in, we're filming this on November 10th. And I think 2 days ago, there was there was an Arab, a Muslim mob that attacked Israelis and Jews on the streets.
Yeah.
And received a very, very bad response from the police. I don't believe there's anybody in custody at this moment. They actually released people, whoever they took into custody. Were you feeling any sort of tension there a week earlier?
So thank God we did not experience any direct anti-Semitism. I will say that the organization that brought us and the people who were planning our trip, which was an organization of Christians for Israel, were very cautious, I think, and I'm glad so, in the sense that they
Did you
didn't.
think at the time, oh, they're overdoing it,
I wasn't sure. I guess I felt okay, better safe than sorry, but only in retrospect I say, wow, like thank God, they didn't publish where our concerts were going to be, only which cities, and there were the only posters that they put out were in the kosher stores. Like it was very, very minimal, like the amount of publicity that was around it, and I'm grateful for that we didn't encounter any any of these terrible experiences that Israelis had in Amsterdam. And I will say that we did experience in the other cities that we visited, more of the smaller towns, a lot of support and love for Israel, which is also heartwarming because we're kind of used to being hated. I feel here in Israel, like that's like we take it for granted. Like, okay, more people hate us. Like it's terrible, but like that's kind of a big part
No, I
of
think it's really, as you
our
know, what my
reality.
husband and I do, our work is really mostly with Christians who love Israel. And it is important. And I think sometimes a lot of Jews and Israelis don't realize how many Christians do love them and support them.
Right. So that was a breath of fresh air to feel, that there are people out there in the world who stand with Israel, who understand what we're going through and who love us. So that was really nice. And hopefully that light will just go and spread.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving me time. I know that, especially if you're saying that Yoni is right now on active duty, you're on active duty by yourself with 4 children. So I appreciate you making the time so much. And
Thank
I will just add as a personal thing, it's the same way it gives me a thrill to see my children as adults. It's a thrill to see, somebody I've known since she was born grow into such a lovely, beautiful woman.
thank
So
you. And I want to thank you because it's really thanks to you and your husband that so much of the Jewish identity that we have all grown up with is thanks to my parents connecting with you both. So thank you
it's
for
a
your
relationship
part.
that we all have benefited from. Okay, take care. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now.